Hello everyone, in this tutorial I'll be sharing all the steps that I use to create the crystal effect in Blender using Cycle. I'll go through the basic modeling to setting up the materials and lighting. The end result would be similar to the one you see here on the screen, also going to be sculpting some hands, or one hand actually, some spirit fingers, or I can say Witcher hand as warlock. And if you like the hand as well as the crystal model that you see in this video, you can take it for only just $50 by clicking the link down in the description below on my Gumroad website. So yep, let's go into it. First things first, sculpting anything, it means gathering good reference. Now you see, for me, I was lucky with getting good reference. I was blessed with two beautiful wrongs and good hands, and I used my left hand as my reference so that I could sculpt with my right, and also look at my left hand, especially the little details like veins, because it's actually not the same as my hand, and I use it just to see the textures and how can project that. While I was working, I took some of my hands reference in 4 kind of orthographic view images of those using my second monitors, took them in Photoshop and just kind of made quick composited image so that I could reference that, import it into Zbrush and using it as reference image. It won't project it, won't do anything odd, and you will be able to work normally. So I don't know where it comes from, but for some reasons there's these ideas that when a lot of artists are starting out, they always ask it's okay to use reference, and the answer to that is absolutely 100% always yes. Always use reference. Your work will always be better for it. It's not cheating up in your little brain. Up here, your little noggin will mind a little. You don't have an exact clear pictures of how everything look. Master artists will always, trust me, of course, be able to sculpt better than you without using reference, but if even a master artist will always be able to sculpt 10 times better if they have reference over if they do not have reference. And the key here is to get your good reference and to always sculpt what you know first, and then what you see after you get there, your reference. It's on making your big shapes or forms, which is, we call it primary shapes, all these kind of things that I call it blocking. For me, I like to split my mesh up into multiple parts. You will see me making the palm of a hand, and I will even make separate shapes for fat pads and muscles, and even for fingers. I use a single fingers and then I duplicate it multiple times, and even another times to create the thumb on this hand. So there's a ton of different ways to kind of block out your sculpt, whether that's using a box modeling program or the tools within Zbrush, or it's kind of doing it the way I do it, where I split my mesh up into multiple parts. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Wherever you ways though, go ahead and spend a lot of time on it, because the blocking and portion your primary forms and shapes are the most important parts of your sculpt. The primary forms will guide the entire rest of your sculpt. So something is off at the beginning portions, the beginning stage, the rest is bound to be wrong, as well as the next step is pretty obvious, but in truth it's the most difficult. It's spending the time, putting in the time and cutting out all the distraction, just little nuggets of distraction all day, garbage trucks, or you just went by picnicking with friends or neighbors, all these kind of bubbling breaks because I'm drinking water all the day. All these different things are little subtle distractions, and you just need to block them out and spend the time working on your skull. For me, that sometimes I'm plugging the internet, rarely, flipping the phone upside down on silent mode, pushing it away, sometimes throwing on the other room, maybe putting on some kind of headphone, listening to some ambient or kind of what makes me focus more, or lyric music, something like that, or can just kind of focus on my work. Once you've kind of reached a point where you feel like you've put enough time into it, or maybe you don't know where to go next, this is the point where you have to walk away from your work now. For me, sometimes it's an hour. I go make some lunch, eat, come back, and I'm able to look at my work with fresh perspective. Occasionally that's taking a day and working on some other stuff, and then coming back and getting a brand new fresh perspective. Wherever that is, I highly recommend it that you try this practice and what walking away for a little bit and coming back to your work does, it's give you that fresh perspective, which you can look at your work now after you walk away. I highly recommend to do critique as well as feedback your own work when you come back, and you don't have to kind of go overboard with your critique, but it can just be something quick, something small, point out things that are wrong with it, so that you can kind of see where you need to go and kind of where you need to go next, and be able to make those changes once you reach another stage where you kind of try this a few times and you feel like you can progress beyond it. That's when you kind of start asking for some outside critique and seeking some help from other people that are maybe more knowledgeable on the subjects that you are creating. I think these practices are very good for being used to sculpt anything, not just hands, but I definitely hope that the visual was helpful of me sculpting the hand as well as progressively seeing great results. So the second part is making the crystal, which is made by geometry nodes. I was working for a while with geometry nodes and creating cool stuff. If one of you asks where I learned, there is a ton of tutorial out there, whether if it's paid or free content, as well as the guides on Blender website. So I start with the default Blender scene, select the cube and delete it. Now press shift and select cylinder. I will now adjust the properties for the cylinder using 8 sides and changing the diameter to 5. You can also try different setting as you like. After that, directly goes to geometry nodes workflow and start adding the nodes instead of explain deep dive, because that would be so long and maybe intimidating for who's new to this workflow. So I prefer to summarize it and give you guys a glimpse of what you can see right now on video. In fact, there are many nodes that I use and the rest are repetitive. The first few points on faces node. The feature of this node is places points on the surface of the input geometry object, which means transfers the objects to generated points. The second is Voronoi texture node. This node specializes in evaluate a worldly noise at the input texture coordinates. In addition, the third is the set position node, which is specialized and controls the location of each point. This the main nodes that I focus on, and then creating the rest of the shape with the other supportive nodes to build the finale shape of crystal. Over the shading nodes, here you can see me setting up the materials as well as the lighting to the crystals to make it the same as the final result. However, in this stage I will summarize them all and say them in one categories for what I use specific. You can follow the video by decrease the speed. So the list nodes are mix shader. This specifically nodes most of the artists who use Blender program and use shading node editor, they use this node a lot, so it's very common between artists. And the second one is volume absorption, the third one translucent BSDF, glass BSDF, subsurface scattering, bomb, diffuse BSDF, noise textures, color ramp, and the last but not least, math. This is not all of them, but most of them, and with this base of note you can build awesome works, definitely. Lastly, the final composition, where here I work with layers and try correcting the colors as well as put all the idea that I want into the models and modify the lighting into this stage. Sometimes goes with either Blender or After Effects beside Photoshop. And with that, I just wanted to say thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, hope you learned something new, and I will see you guys next time. Oh, forget to mention, let me know in the comments below about your views and suggestions for the next content, and I will be happy to reply. This is Vidania.